How's it going? Thursday, December 19th, 2024. This video, a recap of Joe DiMaggio's 13-year career from 1936 through 1951. He missed 3 years serving in the military, 1943, 44, and 45. But he has 13 years of stats. This video, a recap. Let's look at it. 1,736 games. Not enough for me. I like guys 2,500, 3,000 games. We can measure what their production value is. 6,821 at bats. He got 1,390 runs scored. That's a very good ratio. He had 8 seasons over 100 runs scored, and he had 2 seasons over 90. His high, 151 runs scored in one season. That was the 1937 season. He had some good totals his first 7 years in the league. Listen, 132, 151, 129, 108, and he had 93. Then he got 122 and 123. And then later in his career, 110, and then he had 114. So that is 8 seasons over 100 runs scored. 1,390 in 1,736 games. Good ratio of runs scored. Hits, 2,214. That's a very good ratio, too. That's about 1.37 hits per game played. Top 10 all time as far as ratio of hits per game played. 2,214 hits in just a short 13. Actually, it's about 12 and a half year period. 2,200 hits. Says he missed half a season in 1949. And in some of the other seasons, he didn't play the full season. If Joe DiMaggio had played 2,500 games, which would be about another 800 games, he would have had about 3,300 hits. So I like his ratio of hits per game played. It's excellent. 389 doubles, 131 triples, 361 homers. He was a slugger. He had a 46 homer season. Also, he had 6 seasons over 30 homers. He had another season, 29 homers. So 7 out of his 13 seasons, over 30 homers, roughly. 30 homers and more. He had a 39 homer season. Had a 30, a 31, 32. Not only was he a good hitter, but a good slugger. RBIs. This is a very good stat. 1,736 games, 1,537 RBIs. Almost close to an RBI per game played. He had 8 seasons of 100 or more RBIs. 8 out of 13. He had a high of 167 runs batted in one year. That's top 10 all time. Also, he had 155. He had 140. Listen to these totals. His first year, 125. Then he had 167, 140, 126, 133, 125, 114, 155, and 122. Plus, he had 2 other seasons, over 90. So about 10 out of his 13 years, 90 or more runs batted in. The 3 years where he did not have 100 RBIs. 1949, he had 67, but he only played 76 games. And then his last year, he had 71. Because he only played 116 games. So pardon me, it was 11 out of 13 seasons, not 10. 11 out of 13 seasons, 90 or more RBIs. He was an RBI producer. 1,537 RBIs. And it's just 12 and a half years. Whew. 30 stolen bases for his career. How about that? Only 30. He had 790 walks. Here's a good ratio, too. Out of 6,821 at-bats, he struck out 369 times. 1941 season, he struck out 13 times in 541 at-bats. What an excellent ratio of strikeouts per at-bat. Very low or very high ratio. One strikeout like every what? Let's see, on that season alone, 541 at-bats. Let's see. 13 strikeouts in 541 at-bats. What's the ratio? One strikeout per how many at-bats? Let's see if I can get it here. .541 divided by, yeah. He struck out in 1941. Are you ready? Once every 72 at-bats. How about that? Very good. 369 strikeouts, and he had 361 homers. How about that? That ratio. 361 homers, 369 strikeouts. His career on base, 398, about 40% of the time. His career slugging, 579. He had some good seasons there. His high was 673 slugging. He also had a 671, a 643, a 626. A lot of 500 strikeout or slugging. If you're slugging 50% of the time, it's like half the time you're a slugger. And then the total bases, 3,948 in 12 and a half years. I mean, he had, looks like, let's see, 9 seasons, 300 or more total bases. And one of the seasons, he had 418 total bases. I mean, you get 300, you're good. If you go 400, you're very, very good. Listen to these totals for total bases. 367, 418, 348, 310, 318, 348, 304, 355, and 307. 9 seasons out of 13. Slugging, total bases, 300 or more. One more thing. Listen to this. All right, just listen. Joe DiMaggio, we want you You ever hear that song? Jumpin' Joe DiMaggio, we want you on our side. That's a good song. If you get a chance, go to YouTube, put in Joe DiMaggio song, talking about the 56-game hitting streak. All right, let's do this. How can we rank, and rate Joe DiMaggio's career among the greatest of all time? There is a flaw. The flaw is only 13 years. You got to have a good measure of 20 to 25 years if you want to be among the greatest of all time. He had 13 years because he had 3 in the military, but also he had many years where he was injured. Bad heel, bad ankle, bad feet. So we can't put him in the top 10 greatest players of all time because not enough service in Major League Baseball. 13 years. 12 and a half years, really. 1,700 games. You need 2,500 to 3,000. You want to be among the greatest of all time. Ty Cobb, for example, 3,000 games. Pete Rose, 3,500 games. Henry Aaron, 32, almost 3,300 games. Willie Mays, Cal Ripken, all these guys. Babe Ruth had 2,500 games. Lou Gehrig had 2,200 games. Roger Hornsby, 2,200. See what I'm getting at? Joe DiMaggio fell short there, 1,736. But his production when he was in the game was superb. Excellent. So how can we rank him among the greatest hitters of all time? I told you about his ratio of strikeouts per at bats. One every 65 to 70 to 72 at bats, he would strike out. So you couldn't put him away. He had a good amount of home runs in 12 and a half years, 361. Give him 20 years, he's over 500 homers. Also, the production of RBIs, 1,500 plus. Give him 20 years, he's over 2,000 RBIs. He had 1,390, almost 1,400 runs scored. Give him 20 years, he would probably be over 2,000 runs scored. And his 325 batting average, if he wasn't injured, I think it would have been higher. I think he could have been in the 340s career batting average, also if he had played 20 years. And total hits, 2,200 hits in such a short time, 12 and a half years. I think he could have been around 32, 33, maybe 3,500 career hits if he had played 20 to 22 years, right in there. He was on that pace. His first 7 years were incredible. Listen to this. 206 hits. Rookie season, 206. 215, 194, 176, 179, 193, and 186. That was the first 7 years from age 21 to 27. So he was on a pace. If he hadn't served the military and if he wasn't as injured and missing games, I say 3,500 hits and maybe 345 career batting average. He was that good. So can we rank him among the greatest hitters of all time? Where would you put him? It's hard. It's hard. See, what I do is I like career batting average and number of games and number of career hits. So that's where I have my rankings. So career batting average leaders, you go there, and you click on it, and you do career. So we've got Cobb, number 1, 366. Yeah, he's the greatest hitter of all time. No debate there. Then you got to go with Rogers Hornsby's 358 career. He had 2,200 games, and he had 2,900 hits. He had a really good ratio, 1.38 hits per game played. Cobb was about 1.39. Then on my list, I say you need about 2,000 to 2,500 games. But there's a guy that had 1,800 games. But he's number 3 on my list. And that's Ed Delante's 346 career batting average. Why? Because in 1,800 games plus, he had 2,600 hits. That's a ratio of 1.41 hits per game play, which is ranked number 1 all time as far as ratio of hits per game play. Did you know that? Ed Delante's 1.41. 1,800 games plus 2,600 hits, almost. So I got him number 3. Then I put Trish Speaker's 345, number 4 greatest hitter of all time, because he had the 3,500 hits and the 345 average. He had Trish Speaker. This guy was something else. If you look closely at his career, almost 2,800 games, and he had 10,000 at bats, and he maintained 345. So I got him number 4. Then number 5, I put Ted Williams. He had the 2,600 hits. See, not as many as Speaker. But he played 19 years, also served in the military. But he got Ted Williams, for me, almost 2,300 games. See, 600 more games than Joe DiMaggio. And he's got the 344 career batting average. So I got him number 5. You've got Billy Hamilton's 345, but problem with Billy, he was just a 14-year career, and he had like 1,594 games. That was even less than Joe DiMaggio. So I'm not gonna. You got to get to the 2,000 mark or the 2,500 games. Exception, Ed Delante, because of the 2,600 hits in such 1,800 games. See, that convinces me you're really a good hitter if you're on that pace. He was on pace. Ed Delante, he's a strange character. I've read his book. You should follow his career. Played 16 years, but he had 1,837 games. If he had played about 2,500 games, or even close to 3,000 games, if he had, actually, number 1 in games is Pete Rose, 3,562. Let's just presuppose that Ed Delante had played 3,562 games. At his ratio of hits per game played, he would have had over 5,000 career hits. Of course, he didn't do it. His 16-year career ended. So we don't know on his production, but I've got him number 3. I'm going to put Trish Speaker number 4 and Ted Williams number 5 as far as greatest hitters of all time. Then you have a big debate from numbers 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. How about Tony Gwynn? 338, 3,000 hits, 3,100 hits. You got to look at him. It's 338. Also, you got to look at some of these other guys. Joe Jackson, his career was cut short. He had a 356 career, but again, not enough games for me. He only had 1,300 games. So I'm not going to include Joe Jackson, even though he's a good hitter. Lefty O'Doul had a 349. But again, he only played 11 years. About 1,000 games, right? Let's see. Lefty O'Doul, 970 games. Not enough. So you can't consider him. You got Dan Brothers' 19-year career, 342, but Dan Brothers was in the old school way back. He was starts 1879 and 1880s. He did have 2,300 career hits in about 1,676 games, but not enough games for me. Got the 342. Babe Ruth has a 342. You got to consider him among the greatest hitters. Slugging and hitting combo. How about 714 homers, and he still hits 342 and had 2,800 hits, right? Let's see. How many career hits did he have? Yeah, he had 2,873 hits in 2,500 games. But remember, 5 of those years, in the first 5, he was pitching. If he's not pitching, if he's an everyday player there, he's got over 3,000 hits. Easy. So he had an interesting career. Even though it says 22 years, 5 of them pitching. And then there was 1 year he had half the year because he got suspended. And then when his last year only played 28 games. So I can say that Babe Ruth, in about a 16-year period, 2,873 hits in 16 years. That's a really good ratio there. So you got to look at him. You got to look at a guy named Willie Keeler. He had 2,900 hits, and he's got a 341 career batting average. You got to look at Harry Heineman's 341 career batting average. He had 17-year career. How about Lou Gehrig? He was a good hitter, 340. And then you got George Sisler, 340. There's another guy you got to look at also. It's Jesse Burkett. He had 2,900 hits. And Nap Lajoie's 338. So as far as number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, to me, I would go Tony Gwynn. He batted 300 19 years in a row, 300 or better. His first year, 289. Then he went 19 straight, 300 or better. Not too many guys can claim that. Ended up with a 3,100 hits and just 400 strikeouts. So I put Gwynn number 6. I think this George Sisler guy, 257 hits 1 year. Also, he had 2 400 batting seasons. Maybe him, number 7. You got Jesse Burkett also. Had 2 400 batting seasons, 2,900 hits. So maybe Sisler 7, Burkett 8. I guess you can put Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, right, number 9 and 10 as far as greatest hitters. They not only the hitting, but the slugging and the homers. So as far as my top 10, Cobb, Hornsby, Delante, Speaker Williams, Gwynn, Sisler, Burkett, Ruth, and Gehrig right in there. As far as greatest hitters of all time. Joe DiMaggio, where do you put him? You can put him somewhere between 11 and 20. You can't put him in the top 10. He had the 2,200 hits. Yes, he had the 1,700 games, but his average, 325 career. The other guys are ahead of him. They're in the 330s. Oh, you can't forget Stan Musial. Oh, my. Stan the man. But he's 331. Maybe you could put Stan in the top 10 greatest hit. He had 3,600 hits, 3,000 games, and maintained 331. Would you put Stan the Man Musial ahead of Gwynn, Burkett, Ruth, Gehrig in that top 10? Hard, very hard. But DiMaggio, you can put him somewhere between 11 and 20. That's where I'd rank him. But if he had had a career of 20 to 25 years, or 20 to 22 years, let's say, and if his average was in the 340s, and if he had over 3,000 hits, I would put him in the top 10 greatest hitters of all time. He was on that pace, but the military service and then the missed times with injuries hampered his career totals. Joe DiMaggio, what a player. All right, we're done with him. Who's next on my video analysis of a player's career achievement and box scores. Who should I do next? Well, you got to look at guys who have good career batting averages. I'm not doing Aaron and Mays yet. Aaron was 305. Mays was 302. You got other guys who have higher career batting averages. Even though Aaron and Mays, they had a long service and their production was excellent. Not going to do them yet. I've got a choice here. I can look at Dan Brothers because he's 342, but he was old school. I can look at Bill Terry, had a 341. He's an interesting character. Bill Terry, 1,700 games, just like he had the same as Joe DiMaggio as far as games, but DiMaggio had more hits. Terry, 2,193. DiMaggio, 2,200. But Terry beat him in batting average, 341. Also, he had a 400 batting season. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look at Bill Terry next. Talk to you later. I'm out.